Capital of Combat. The name says it all. I'm Hakeem Branch.
Rob Jarrell.
And today we're going to recap this past Saturday's action, which included on NBC, Premier Boxing Champions, you had Robert Guerrero versus Martinez. And on HBO, we had Miguel Cotto versus Daniel Geale. Now, on the HBO broadcast, they only had Cotto and Geale. So we'll start with the PBC broadcast and touch on some of the other fights, and then talk about the main event, which was Guerrero-Martinez. Go ahead and get started, Rob.
All right, so for the PBC broadcast, it looks like they started out with
Dominic Brazil.
Dominic Brazil, the 2012 super heavyweight Olympian for the United States, and is it Ismani Consigliere?
Yeah, you did a better job of that than me.
Consigliere, I hate that I mispronounced his name, but he's a heavyweight out of Cuba that's based in Florida with an extended amateur background. But the only thing, a lot of his fights were in the Dominican Republic.
Yeah, against no-hopers. Like I think the record was like 123 and 125 and
a lot.
Yeah, they were a lot of just, I guess, journeymen and guys who just take fights to take fights.
Now, Brazil was 14-0 coming into this fight. Consigliere was 17-0. So brought that kind of glimmering record, which can be misleading because, again, a lot of his fights were in the Dominican Republic. So what we saw out here is that even though he got the win, Dominic Brazil still is very raw, and he needs to show a lot more improvement. It seems like they're going to bring him along like they did Deontay Wilder, because he still makes those mistakes that you really shouldn't be making. Again, for a guy that's about 6'6", at 250, 260 pounds, he still gets hit a lot and still doesn't really use his height to his advantage, especially against a guy that he had about 5 inches on, at the very least.
His face has not met a right hand they did not like.
And they constantly, it's throwing that punch over his left jab or that lead right. And he's showing a good chin. I think he's been knocked down once.
Yeah. But
that is something that his trainers and coaches really need to improve on. I don't care if it's making sure that jab is here and bringing it back all the way up, using your feet, maybe trying to create some head movement, which is something that a lot of guys who start boxing very late, because he was an ex-football player, really don't either practice or really grasp.
Yeah, it's going to be, one, he definitely has to practice bringing his hand back after he's jabbing, because that's what they're doing. Once he jabs, it comes down here, they shoot a right hand, he has no way to block it. Secondly, using his feet. If he establishes his own range, then maybe they won't be in range to land that right hand. He's a very tall guy. So those are the two things he should work on so he does not get countered so much. We know the power is there. He's knocked out most of his opponents. I think
it was like he was 14 with 14-0 with like 13 knockouts.
Yeah, I think it's one person that made it the distance with him. But he could really serve himself well if he does those two things, because when he starts to get up there with the Chris Ariolas and even like a Travis Walker type of fighter like that, he might get put to sleep. So hopefully as they move him slow, they teach him those things so he can get better.
And he's starting to fight, about every 2 to 3 months. But I really would like to see him get a lot of rounds in with his trainers and establishing defense. I don't care if it's establishing range so he doesn't get hit like Deontay Wilder does, which he uses his length very well, especially he doesn't have the greatest jab, but he uses it to keep his opponents at bay.
Right. Let's move on to another fight on the undercard that we mentioned during the preview video, which is Jesus Cuellar and Victor Archinian. And in that fight, we didn't really touch on it too much. We just said that somebody was going to get knocked out, and most likely it was going to be Victor Archinian. That did happen, but Victor Archinian did have a lot of success landing overhand lefts and troubling Cuellar at spots during this fight. But in the end, he was just too small. Darchinian was a flyweight world champion, which is 112 pounds, and down there he was a terror He was 112 pounds of fury, knocking people out left and right, and he was very adept at landing his left hand in very different angles and many different ways. He can still land it, it's just not having the same effect that it did at 126 as it does at 112. And also being 39 years old, having like 40, I think it's 47 fights. He's been around the block. It shows, and unfortunately it shows up most when he gets hit flush. So hopefully they stop feeding him to these young guys.
Or at least he moves back down in weight to something that is his better weight than what he's at now.
Right. He was still getting knockouts at 115 and 118, but being that he's like closing in on 40, he might not be able to even get down that low anymore. So that's something we have to look out for. That's it for that. Also, Alfredo Angulo got a knockout on there, but as we know, his career is pretty much done at the top level, unfortunately. Those long layoffs and the lack of defense that he had exhibited prior to linking up with Virgil Hunter is really catching up with him. So he'll stay on undercards and, you know, opening bouts until they just try to take one more big step up, and it's going to end badly, unfortunately.
It'll be, unfortunately, a cash out at that point, but...
Yeah. So let's talk about the main event. This card, we had Robert Guerrero and Aaron Martinez. And in our preview video, we said this was pretty much a showcase fight, a kind of reward for Robert Guerrero because he performed pretty well on the premier PBC card against Keith Thurman. They gave him another fight. It was like, hey, you were entertaining. Let's get this guy back in the ring. Now, in Martinez, we had a guy who hadn't fought in, I think it was 14 months. He last lost by knockout to Josecito Lopez. And because of that, we were thinking, hey, this is Rob Guerrero. He's 3-division world champ. Been in there with Mayweather, been in there with Keith Thurman, been in there with Andre Berto. This should not be a hard fight for him. But that is why they fight the fights. You still got to get in the ring, and you still got to fight, because when they did get in the ring and they did fight, it turned out to be a real tough fight for Robert Guerrero. I mean, he was bullied around a lot by Martinez, and this was a guy who coming in had only 4 knockouts. Now that's something different to when you're talking about concussive knockout power and physical strength. This guy is still a welterweight, and while Robert Guerrero is still pretty much growing into the division, he skipped the 140-pound weight class. He fought like 1 or 2 times at 135. It wasn't a lot. So he's been a welterweight, and on top of that, he's been having long layoffs, like between the Mayweather fight and his next fight against Kamagai. I think it was like a year and some change. Then he had a layoff of almost another long time before he fought Thurman, and now he's right back in the ring against Martinez. But like I said, he has not gotten a chance to really grow into the welterweight division, and you could tell because Martinez was muscling him around the ring for the better half of that fight. For the first half of that fight, whenever Martinez could press him against the ropes, he did it with ease. He caught him squared up against the ropes for very long stretches of time, and it looked like Guerrero could do nothing to get off. And Martinez just put his head down and just threw punches. I mean, he was going to do as best as he could to win. He wasn't trying to go in there and be cute. He wasn't trying to move. He wasn't trying to cut any angles. He was going to throw punches and overwhelm Guerrero. And he did do that for about, I would say, maybe about 6 rounds. There may have been 1 or 2 in there where Guerrero got the better of the inside work. But for the most part, it was all Martinez, especially in round 4, where he came up big time. Let Rob talk about that.
All right, so in that round, it was more the same. Martinez was able to bully him around, and because his head was in his chest, He had Guerrero against the ropes, squared up, where he couldn't get any leverage on his punches. Martinez was able to throw shots that he probably couldn't see because his head was down. Now, if his head's down, he's looking. If you shoot an uppercut, if you bring your head up and shoot an uppercut, you never see it coming. Or if you throw to the body or upstairs, because he threw a bunch of jabs.
No.
They were all wide looping shots to Guerrero that he really did not see. Now he had some times where he was able to put Martinez on the ropes, but you could tell like Martinez was just physically stronger than Guerrero. And in the fourth round, it was at the end of the fourth round, Martinez he landed an uppercut. I think he landed with
He landed a very long combination with it was like 6 body punches, a couple uppercuts, a couple wide rights and hooks, and Guerrero went down.
Yeah, and it wasn't that he went down. That fight honestly could have been stopped because he dropped his hands, then fell.
Yeah, it looked bad. When I first saw it, I was like, oh my God, this guy's about to be knocked out. Luckily, he was able to recover very swiftly because he was able to catch himself as he went down. Mm-hmm. He was able to get up, beat the 8 count, and while he was still shaky, he was responsive enough to keep the fight going. And also, luckily, that it happened at the very end of the round where Martinez didn't have any time to capitalize on him being as hurt as he was.
And that's a good thing because had he not caught himself, I really think that they would have called this fight. Again, he was out on his feet for at least a second right before he fell.
Yeah.
So
he took maybe 2 or 3 shots when his arms dropped and before he hit the canvas.
Now I'm gonna be honest, I've seen Guerrero has been into the whole CrossFit thing for his training, at least for conditioning. He looked good physically in there against Cotto-Geale. Didn't look bad versus Thurman. But for some reason in this fight, he didn't have
that solid muscle frame that he's had in the last few fights.
So I'm not sure what happened in his training, if he overtrained, if he didn't train as much, if he didn't have a long camp. It just seemed like he wasn't physically prepared to go in there.
And I think that might have played a lot into it. He's already not that big of a welterweight to begin with. Mm-hmm. And Martinez, while bigger than him, isn't that big of a welterweight either. But he fought last in March, mm-hmm. and this is June. That's only 3 months. And for a fighter, that's not a lot of time to they usually take a month off and rest, then get back in the gym, then they take 8 weeks to prepare for a fight.
Especially coming off a loss.
Right. One where you lost a lot of rounds. He got beat up bad against Thurman. He just had a really good 11th and 12th round to make the fight interesting. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, he did get beat pretty badly in that fight. And maybe some of that rubbed off. Maybe his body has not recovered from that. Who knows? But you have to give him credit because he made some adjustments mm-hmm. to pull that fight out. One, he started using his jab a lot more.
That's right.
He started creating angles. He started turning Martinez. He kept him at the end of his punches. And when Martinez did get inside, like I said, he would turn him or he would just grab him so he wouldn't get out of there. But he also landed some good body work as well.
Yes, he very well did.
Both guys were throwing pretty borderline in this fight. But you have to give Guerrero credit for biting down, digging deep, and finishing that fight and coming out with the victory.
Now, it was very close, even controversial. It was 95-94.
Broke 2 ways.
2 ways, one for Martinez, one for Guerrero, and then some ridiculous 97-92, which is by far. We have really been seeing one card that has been looking very awful on a lot of fights.
Yeah, I don't understand. For that scorecard, that they had to give Guerrero 8 rounds because you give Martinez an extra point for the knockdown. So I don't see where this guy got 8 rounds for Robert Guerrero and only 2 for Martinez. But he was sitting ringside, so I don't know.
that guy's gonna have to explain himself. I'm gonna have to look up who the ref was that turned in that scorecard, but
Yeah, the judge.
the judge, someone's gonna have, because this is I swear to God, the 5th week in a row where, granted, we're giving them the wins, but don't make it ridiculous.
Yeah, true.
So we're gonna move on to the HBO broadcast with Miguel Cotto versus Daniel Geale.
The real deal, Daniel Geale.
And what we said was this was going to be some truth serum for Cotto in the middleweight division. Now, as we know, it was a catch weight of 157, which
Yes.
Geale has made known that he's had trouble making, and he's had trouble making 160 in general.
Right. And it was either right before or right after we shot the video. We watched the weigh-in.
Right.
And Geale looked sick. Like you could, his eyes were drawn in. He was moving really slow. Like he just looked tired. And I was like, man, he looks awful.
Now he made 157. I was about to say 175. 157. Cotto, on the other hand, came in at 153 and a half.
Yeah, he came in very light.
Now, how do we know it was going to be a problem? Come fight night, Daniel Geale actually rehydrated up to 182 pounds. That is a 25-pound increase. And we had said that he really, I don't know if he said this on camera.
No, we did.
We did. That he only, to be healthy, if he made it healthy, he could come in no more than 170. That is 13 pounds, well within that range, very acceptable. That's how you know he made it that weight properly.
Right.
Cotto came in probably close to about what, 160?
Yeah, he didn't get weighed on the unofficial scale fight night, but you could tell that he was much smaller than Daniel Geale. But one of the caveats of that, we said the fight had to go late for that to really, really make a difference. And he also had to really rough Cotto up, none of which happened. The thing that I was most impressed about with Miguel Cotto was his defense. Because one, he isn't known for it, and two, neither is his trainer, Freddie Roach. Those guys aren't known for defense, but his defense was great. I mean, Geale isn't the fastest guy, but he can put hands on you. He has decent timing, he throws punches in bunches, and he can create angles. He's very slick. That's something we mentioned in the pre-fight video. But Miguel Cotto had some head movement going on. He was slipping, he was ducking, he was moving out of the way, he used his feet. I mean, it was a fantastic defensive display from Miguel Cotto. The offense we already knew was going to be there. That left hook was almost automatic, landing hard, landing fast, landing early. And Geale felt it early on in the fight.
Yeah, Cotto was just on his toes, just using the entire ring and just setting up that left hook to the body, which he landed beautifully because that is his money punch. Then going right back upstairs to the head of Geale, and Geale pretty much did what he could. He tried to move as much as he could, tried to land, but you could tell that even though he was knocked out in the 4th round, had it gone longer than 4, he would have faded badly.
Yeah. Now, a lot of people are going to try to discredit Cotto because of the weight and how Daniel Geale made the weight. But let's make one thing clear. There was a vast skill difference between Miguel Cotto and Daniel Geale. And most times, the better skilled fighter is going to win. Now, if you have two equally skilled fighters, then most times the bigger guy is going to win. Because they're able to land a little bit harder, be a little bit more physically strong, and those little small intangibles. But in this case, the experience of Miguel Cotto, the pedigree of Miguel Cotto was much better than Daniel Geale's. And a lot of people are going to need some preparation H after I say this statement, but his win did look better than Golovkin's. But, big but, that does not mean that I think he's going to beat Golovkin, because there was a lot of times where there was a certain other, let's go to the welterweight division, Well, there was a certain welterweight that was looking better than another welterweight who was better skilled in their head-to-head matchups, but when they fought each other, it wasn't close.
Exactly.
So I still think Golovkin, because like I said, equal skill, bigger guy wins. This is going to be two very good fighters if they ever fight, but Golovkin is bigger than Miguel Cotto, which will show.
And let's face it, Miguel Cotto looks like we'll be fighting Canelo probably sometime in September, maybe October.
Yeah.
Depends on
the weight is the big question with that one.
They're looking. It seems like they're looking at maybe 155 or 156 at a catch weight, which
will probably be for Miguel Cotto's middleweight title.
Yeah.
Canelo, does Canelo have any belts at 154? Did he pick up? So I know Mayweather has 2 of them, and then
does Andrade have one?
He did win one. He's been sitting on the shelf ever since.
And Bundrich has one. I don't want to get into the WBA stuff because they probably have like 3 or 4 champions with that same belt. So
yeah, because I think Lara's an interim champ.
We'll have to look it up. It's about to get confusing.
Yeah, when you start talking about belts, like especially with the WBA and WBO, they'll have like 3 or 4 champs in the same weight class. But Miguel Cotto and Canelo Alvarez are the 2 biggest names in the sport, not named Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao.
Mm-hmm.
So this fight is going to be huge. It's going to do mega numbers, and there is no way that this fight is a dud.
And I mean, you got the same old Mexican fighter versus Puerto Rican, which means it's going to bring out a whole hell of a lot of people in New York, Florida, Texas, California, Puerto Rico, Mexico. It's going to bring the whole shebang.
Yes, and they'll probably put that fight in Vegas because of the amount of money it'll make.
Well, Vegas or the Barclays, more likely Vegas.
Yeah, more than likely Vegas. As that fight gets closer, we'll like really break it down. Right now, I honestly think it's a toss-up because Canelo Alvarez is really good. He's slept on, but he is a really good fighter. Miguel Cotto, we already know his pedigree. He's a damn good fighter. Hall of Fame certified. And they both are very excellent offensive fighters, very underrated defensive fighters who like to entertain and can do so in exciting fashion. So that one is going to be a very good one to look forward to. So that's next for Cotto, and he said if Golovkin's still there, he'll take Golovkin after that. You gotta love the guy. He doesn't turn down anybody. Just give him his money.
That's right.
Nothing wrong with that. But that's it for this episode, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Give us a like. Share it with your friends. Anybody you know to watch this boxing, share it with them. If you got any comments, put them down below. You can follow us on Facebook, CapitalofCombat, Google Plus, same name. You can hit us up on our email, capitalofcombat@gmail.com. Any of those venues, you can ask us any questions. We'll put you in the combat mailbag. And stay tuned because we got some technical toolboxes coming real soon. So that's it for this episode, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
This is round 1 and you've already lost. They don't seem to see that everything we've done is come at a cost. My fists are on fire, I perform till I perspire. My demons are in a rage, keep thinking that it's a game. I kick rhyme, hurricane, I told them I don't play, I'm liquid.
Black Street Fighter.